Hello everyone, it's Ian Robb. Today I wanted to make a quick video about the deck that I wish I played for the Pokemon World Championship this year. So this list is a few cards off of what I would have played for the tournament. I'll be talking about these differences in a little bit, but this is a deck I found to be really powerful. I ended up thinking that the Gardevoir matchup was very favorable. I'll explain why in a second. And the Goldango matchup was very favorable. So the deck had a lot of good matchups against predictive field. The big problem though was that I felt that the Dragapult matchup was very bad, and I decided to not play the deck because of that. So now let's get into the list. So this list is a little bit different than what I've been playing in the past. The big reason for this is that Pidgeot EX is actually a really well positioned card right now. Pidgeot EX fell in popularity a lot due to how popular Bidoof was, because not just Dragapult played it, decks like Gardevoir was really reliant on Bidoof. So it didn't really make much sense to be playing Rare Candy in your deck list. Now, only Dragapult plays it. You really want to be playing Pidgeot in your decks because it's just so powerful being able to find a card every single turn that otherwise you might not be able to get. And a deck like a Noctowl deck, it's very good because usually you're one piece off of whatever combo you want to make. So if you always get +1 card every turn, it gets a lot easier to do what you want. This is why the Gardevoir EX matchup went from awkward to pretty good, because if you get Pidgeot out, it allows you to get your Briar play a lot easier, allows you to go like Counter Catcher Angela a lot better, or anything else that you want to do. So that is why Pidgeot is so powerful in the deck. Now some other changes. A card that I've said a lot of bad things about in the past, I have now changed my opinion on. Wellspring Ogrepon is a card that's really awkward, because the biggest thing in the past was it's really resource intensive because it costs you 3 energy or 2 plus a sparkling crystal to get your first attack with it. And the thing is that Noctowl doesn't play well with just Ogrepon, because for Noctowl decks you usually need to have resources on board for when you use Noctowl to be able to gain board state advantage, not just a prize advantage. So Wellspring doesn't really play well with that because most decks are able to redevelop maybe Iona U and you don't find much. This changes now with Pidgeot, because now you can chain Crispins or do anything else really and just rebuild very efficiently and quickly. So Wellspring now deserves a slot. Now I go into a card that I'm a little less confident on if it should be in the deck. So Sylveon EX does something very similar to Wellspring Ogrepon. It is your way to either lock your opponent through something like Angelite, shuffling in their Pokemon, or to slow them down, where you're able to make sure that they take a few more turns to set up. Wellspring does a very similar role because you're able to just knock out the Pokemon before they evolve, or just retreat lock them and slow them down. So I think that if you were to change a card in the deck, I think Sylveon is the most cuttable card in the deck. Now, so for some other cards, Mew EX is a card that I was not originally a big fan of in this deck, because you really want to have a heavier Pidgeot line than a 101 with a rare candy. But what I found is that you just can't really afford to be that reliant on Pidgeot. So that's why I have Mew EX in the deck, because Mew EX plus Fez plus Area Zero is the best way to make yourself mostly Iona proof. Not perfectly Iona proof, but a little bit Iona proof. Other cards is Jacques. Jacques is a card where, so that slot needs to be either Brock Scouting, a Jacques, or Silene, because the big thing is you just need a supporter way to search up a copy of either Noctowl, Flareon, or Pidgeot, because the other cards, Noctowl and Flareon, you won't be able to put into play through Bidoof. So Jacques is the best one right now, because Jacques allows you to get Noctowl plus Pidgeot and really get a bigger turn, while Brox just doesn't really get you enough. And Silene is just a little bit awkward because it doesn't allow you to get Noctowl. So right now, because of how the meta is positioned, where you really get these big turn 2 plays, Jacques is really good in the way to play that supporter slot. Some other cards I want to talk about is a second copy Buddy Poffin. That's something originally cut, but re-added by reducing the Pidgeot line from a 212 to a 101. Just Buddy Poffin's one of your best openers, because this deck needs to be able to get out like 3 or 4 basics in your first 1 and 2 turns. So having an extra copy just makes it so you're more consistent. Other interesting card is Gravity Mountain. This is one I'm not really that big of a fan of, and I wish the deck did not need to include it. But the card is quite powerful because it allows you to knock out a Gardevoir EX with Flareon without needing to play Umbreon EX. And that really is a game changer in the Gardevoir matchup, because now you can usually win the prize trade, while in the past it was quite difficult to do that. Some other cards that I think are a little bit interesting I want to note is Lily's Clefairy. I see some lists not play the card just mainly due to how Dragapult's a bad matchup even with it. So the card could be a not auto include. I still think it's worth it because it's really good against Dragapult because while yes, the matchup's still bad, I want a way to be able to beat the deck instead of just saying I concede when I see my opponent flip over a Dreepy. Some other things, Sparkling Crystal, just I think it's the best ace spec. You can play something like Unfair Stamp instead, but you really need the extra energy acceleration on your second to third turn so that you're able to survive a miss of a turn 1 energy attachment, or you missed something at some point, like you need to retreat or do something else. So the 1 extra energy makes it so that you can use Trapagos without anything or do other crazy plays. The rest list I think is pretty straightforward. Most of it is cards you are forced to play. I think some cards in the deck that I would like to play. The first one is Glass Trumpet. This is a card that in the past I was not a big fan of because it just felt like a worse version of energy because it's really hard to use with Noctowl because it means that you don't, like, say you want to turn your Eevee into something, you have to keep Eevee on bench, you have to have another Terror type to find your Glass Trumpet, and you need to be able to retreat into that Eevee and then evolve it. So I think that's a little bit asking for a lot, but it's changed now with Pidgeot because Pidgeot just makes it so that you have a free retreat Pokemon and you're able to just search it before you something like retreat, evolve, and then use Noctowl. So the card has gotten a lot better than I felt it was in the past. Other cards is Kieran. Kieran is a pretty solid card. It just does plus 30. Allows Trapagos at 270 into Ursaluna. Allows your Flareon to knock out your Dragapult, but that's the thing it's asking for a lot, really. It's a Dragapult, and against Ursaluna, you have Flareon, so it's more of a win more card, if that makes sense, where, yes, there are situations that you really want the card, but you don't actually need it, so I don't really think it's worth playing in the deck. Other card I like is the second Night Stretcher. It's a very good, flexible card, but there's just not enough space anymore, and the last card is just an extra energy of any type. I think you can really go anyway. Third Water, second Lightning, second Grass, but there's really isn't enough space. Now I'll talk about the reasons to play this deck and the reasons not to play it. The biggest reason to actually play this deck is an excellent Goldango matchup because your deck just plays very well prize trade where they go 5 to 6, attack Flareon, you're 4 to 5. It's almost impossible for them to win. So that is like the biggest reason to play this deck. Along with that, I really like this deck's Gardevoir matchup because the thing is that you almost always win the prize trade with Burning Charge, especially if Gardevoir is going to get a little bit less consistent with how lists are going away from Evo and more towards things like Frillish. It just means that this deck can punish those plays more efficiently than Gardevoir is able to respond because you're really good at getting a turn 2 Flareon without much resources, especially if you're not getting Iono disrupted as often due to Lilies being a card you want to play early. So I think that Gardevoir is a really solid matchup because the prize trade is really, really good, especially if no longer Drifloon being the most popular way to play Gardevoir. Now going to some of the downsides. The first is Dragapult. That's a matchup that used to be really good before Dragapult lists got a lot better. Old lists didn't play things like Neo Upper Energy. That's a card that really changed the matchup because if they don't play it, Angelite usually just locks them out of the game. Along with that, just playing more Draw Spoilers instead of Arven. Draw Spoilers allows you to get out of Angelite, while in the past, if you just played a heavier Arven Iono count, you're able to punish that a lot better with Sylveon. Other issues are just random matchups. This deck is actually pretty awkward against just random things. Angelite's just not good at actually beating a lot of the format because the game has moved from a more Arven-centric build to a lot more of draw cards, so you can't just use Angelite and expect that to work. Another big thing is just unknown meta. Again, if you're really bad against random decks, I would not want to play this deck if I do not know what decks I am facing. The time that I played this deck and did well last season was because I knew going to Milwaukee almost the exact meta, and I got rewarded for facing what I predicted to meta to look like at top tables. Other than that, I think this deck is very strong, and if you want to try something new, going to the Mega Evolution format, I would highly recommend it. If you're trying to learn more about the deck, I created a guide over on Metafy about the deck in my run at Milwaukee back in May, in getting top 8. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask me here on X or on Metafy. And if you want to see more of my content, check out my other stuff here and my stuff on Substack and Medify. Till next time, Ian out. Peace.